In today's video, I want to talk about autistic executive function, what it is, why it's misunderstood, and how to work with it in everyday life. So to start off with, we're going to talk about the gap between knowing and doing. We're going to go deep into something that quietly creates enormous strain in the neurodiverse relationship, executive function. Now, if you're autistic, you may live with a constant internal frustration. I know what needs to happen, why can't I just start? And if you're married to someone who's autistic, you may think, they're so smart, they understand, why does this keep falling apart? And if this has been happening for years, executive function struggles can start to feel like character flaws instead of neurological differences. So today, we're going to untangle this completely. We're going to cover what executive function actually is neurologically, how it uniquely presents in autistic adults, why it creates relational injury over time, and detailed real-world systems that actually work. Now, this isn't about making excuses. It's about architecture, because once you understand the architecture of executive function, you stop fighting the wiring and start designing better systems. Now, first of all, let's look at why executive function is a brain system, not a personality trait. Executive function lives primarily in the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain that's responsible for initiating tasks, organizing sequences, prioritizing, managing time, holding multiple pieces of information in working memory, inhibiting impulses, emotional modulation under stress, and flexibility. Think of it as the brain's air traffic control tower. It doesn't fly the planes, it coordinates them. Now, in autistic adults, intelligence and executive function are often unevenly distributed. As an ASD individual, you might have exceptional analytical ability, deep focus in special interest areas, high moral clarity, and strong long-term memory. But at the same time, you may struggle with starting mundane tasks, switching between activities, estimating time, handling unexpected changes, and organizing multi-step processes. This unevenness is confusing for spouses and deeply frustrating for the autistic adult themselves, because the outside world sees capability, but the internal system feels inconsistent, and that inconsistency is where shame begins. Now let's talk about the initial problem, why starting is so hard. We're going to talk about task initiation, and this is one of the most misunderstood executive challenges. From the outside, it looks like procrastination. Internally, it often feels like neurological friction. Think of all the stuff starting requires. It requires clarifying the task, breaking it down into steps, estimating effort, overriding inertia, and managing emotional resistance. And if any of those steps stall, initiation stalls. For most autistic adults, ambiguity is paralyzing. For example, clean the kitchen. That can be overwhelming. Whereas put the dishes in the dishwasher is manageable. The brain struggles not with the work itself, but with organizing entry into the work. The gap between intention and action can feel like moral failure over time. And if your NT spouse repeatedly interprets that delay as lack of care, the autistic partner begins associating tasks with shame, which further delays initiation. Now you don't just have executive dysfunction, you have emotional avoidance layered on top of it. Now let's look at transition shock and cognitive rigidity. This is another key feature in transition difficulty. Autistic brains often operate in deep focus states. When immersed, the nervous system is regulated, but switching abruptly creates a spike in cognitive load. For example, you're focused on a project, your NT wife comes in and says, hey, can you come and talk right now? And that kind of throws you off, but it's not about refusal, it's about neurological reorientation. The brain has to disengage, recalculate, shift attention, and regulate emotional tone. And to the ASD brain, rapid transitions feel like interruption trauma. And over time, frequent forced transitions can create irritability, not because the request is unreasonable coming from your NT wife, but because the system feels constantly disrupted. For the neurotypical spouse, this looks like rigidity. For the autistic spouse, it feels like constant destabilization. Now let's talk about time blindness and relational trust. Time perception is another executive function component. Autistic adults may struggle with estimating how long tasks will take, tracking passage of time, accurately predicting energy depletion, and this creates chronic lateness or undercompletion. Now, from the NT spouse's perspective, this damages trust. Your NT wife might be thinking, I can't rely on him for follow-through. But from the autistic perspective, the failure often feels shocking. I thought I had time, I didn't realize it had been that long. And this mismatch creates relational injury if not addressed systemically. Trust cannot be rebuilt through willpower alone. It requires structure. Now let's talk about the emotional regulation under executive load. Executive function and emotional regulation are deeply connected. When executive load increases, emotional tolerance decreases. If you, as the ASD spouse, are already managing multiple tasks, processing sensory input, navigating social expectations, then even small relational requests can feel overwhelming. This is where meltdowns, shutdowns, or sharp responses occur. Not because you don't care, but because cognitive bandwidth is exhausted. Then the neurotypical spouse often experiences this as unpredictability, which creates anxiety, which increases pressure, which increases executive overload, and this becomes a loop. Now let's talk about advanced practical systems that actually work. We're going to move into some deeper tools here. Number 1, externalize everything. If it's not visible, it doesn't exist reliably. So use shared digital boards, weekly planning meetings, visual calendars, written step breakdowns. Don't rely on verbal agreements alone. Number 2, micro-commitment structure. Instead of committing to full tasks, commit to entry points. I'll work on this for 10 minutes. Starting reduces friction and momentum builds after entry. Number 3, transition buffers. Build 15-minute buffers between activities. In other words, avoid stacking demands back to back. This protects regulation. Number 4, weekly executive alignment meeting. Once a week, review responsibilities, adjust expectations, clarify timelines, and reassign if necessary. This reduces surprise disappointment. Number 5, energy mapping. Track your energy patterns for 2 weeks. Notice where are you sharp, when are you drained, and assign complex tasks to high energy windows, and assign maintenance tasks to low energy windows. Number 6, replace shame with language. The autistic partner may think, I'm experiencing initiation block. Then the NT partner can say, okay, well, let's shrink the starting step. Neutral language reduces defensiveness. Now let's talk about what long-term growth looks like. Executive function does not disappear, but it can improve with consistent structure, reduced shame, predictable routines, clear division of labor, emotional safety. For the ASD husbands out there listening, your brain does not love ambiguity, so reduce it. For the neurotypical wives out there, stop interpreting executive gaps as relational indifference. Executive function is not the absence of love. It's the absence of internal organization support. So when couples shift from blaming to designing systems, resentment decreases dramatically. So please keep in mind, executive function is about architecture, not character. Autistic adults often live with invisible friction, and neurotypical spouses often live with invisible burden. Both deserve relief. You cannot will executive function into stability, but you can build scaffolding around it. Think of it like this: design over shame, structure over blame, collaboration over criticism. Now, if this resonated, let me know which executive function challenge creates the most strain in your neurodiverse relationship. And if you want more deep dive tools like this, subscribe and stay connected. Also, please comment. I read and respond to all comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Would you like to schedule a paid private coaching session? This will be in the form of a face-to-face Zoom call. Underneath any of my videos, you'll see this Calendly link. If you click on that link, it'll open up my calendar. You can pick the available days and times that works for your schedule. You'll get a follow-up email immediately after purchasing a session that will have the Zoom link that coincides with the day and time that you picked. I will get an email too that you scheduled a session, and I will be available on that exact day and time, and we will talk. I look forward to working with you.